Hello everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to the Book Refuge. Hi guys, I am so excited to have you here with me today for the next fanfiction recommendation video that I'm going to be doing today. And the way I'm actually going to be doing this one today is I'm going to go over all of the fanfictions I've read so far in 2024 because those are the ones that I haven't put in specific videos yet or anything. I do have a playlist of all my fanfiction content up here, and there are, I believe, almost 100 that I have shared in the past couple of years since I started reading these in 2022. I've done a couple fanfiction readathons, and I hope to do one again later this year, but summertime just really got away from me, so I'm not sure when I'll be doing the next one. But definitely let me know down below if you're interested, because if there's not enough interest, I'll probably just keep on reading myself and not worry so much about what other people are looking for with it. But yeah. First off, I do have two disclaimers, and if you're someone who's been around for those before, you're familiar with fanfiction, you know what I'm going to say, you can just skip ahead to the first fanfiction that I share. You don't need to hear these. But for anyone else who this might be their first fanfiction video that they're stumbling across, either you specifically were looking it out or you're my follower who is like, oh, what's this video about? I just have a couple of disclaimers. First off, I read 100% currently, right now, I read Harry Potter fan fiction. I don't want to see any comments about why, how dare you be reading that, you're supporting someone you shouldn't be, blah, 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 blah. I just don't want to hear it. Everyone's allowed their own opinions. For me, fan fiction, which does not benefit the original creator of the IP, isn't supporting that person. In fact, if you want to get into the nitty-gritty, it's actually stealing from them, right? If you make it and are trying to make money off it or any of those things. I'm not making any statements about the original author of this works one way or the other. Those opinions are my own, and I still choose to indulge in fan fiction because I think it's freaking awesome and fun and great to spend time in a world that just feels so comforting to me. Whether I'm reading really dark versions of this or I'm reading more fun, cozy ones, which we definitely have a full gamut of that to go over today. So I just don't want to hear it. You're welcome to hold whatever your opinions are, but don't come into my comments attacking me or any of my other viewers. I'm just going to block you from the channel. You're wasting your time. You are. It's fine. You don't have to agree with me. I hope you're not watching this video. If you don't, you can just poof, click away. Okay? The other thing, well, I guess it was a caveat to that. I am open to other types of fan fiction. In previous years, I have read a couple other ones, but currently when I want to pick up a fan fiction, it's usually because I want to spend time with Draco and Hermione, or Lucius and Hermione, or Severus and Hermione. There aren't that many other worlds that I'm even interested in the fan fiction of them, but you're welcome to recommend them down below, whether in the comments of this video, you can recommend them for me and other people. Or I do have a book recommendation form. You can put fan fiction recs in there as well. In fact, many people do, and I definitely have taken recommendations from there. I think some of the ones I'm going to talk about today were recommended in my form. So there's that. Then the final thing I will say is that I have a couple of hand-bound fan fictions to share with you. I mean, I always sit in front of my whole shelf that has all of those there. But I do have a couple that were bound for me as a gift by a friend of mine. The ones behind me, I have 3 different people who've bound fan fictions for me, but the ones I'm sharing today were bound by a friend of mine, and she did them completely as a gift. I didn't pay her anything for them. I didn't, offer anything in trade. Honestly, she blessed me with these books. You yourself, you should never pay for fan fiction. You never should. It needs to remain free. It's supposed to be free. If you see those ads that Facebook and Instagram are allowing to be on their sites that show people advertising books, that is illegal. It is illegal to make money off of someone else's IP that you have, and very often it's not even the authors of fan fiction who are trying to profit. They very rarely are, because they love being able to write it. And really one of the only ways that fan fiction is allowed to continue to be made is if people don't make money off of it. you can't make money off of it, okay? So I know you're going to see some very beautiful things that I'm going to show. You may see people's really beautiful books, but you either got to find friends like I did who are willing to gift you that, or you got to learn how to bind yourself. And there's lots of people who've taught themselves how to bind just so they can have physical copies of these. Because if you learned how to bookbind, which I know that sounds so easy me saying it, but I haven't even tried to learn how, because I don't have the bandwidth to do something like that. But my point being, I wouldn't have any of these if someone didn't gift them to me. I'm extremely blessed to have them. But you yourself, you never have to pay for a fan fiction. You can have it put onto your Kindles by downloading it from the website, usually Archive of Our Own or fanfiction.net, and you can put it on your Kindle and it's free. You don't have to pay a single penny to have them. And so please don't go pay someone hundreds of dollars for them to print out the words that are not theirs and bind them into a book for you, okay? Just please don't get scammed that way. But again, I know that it is easy for me to say that when I have copies of books, but I'll tell you, there's 100 more that I wish that I had. And if I had the money and the time, I would be binding them myself. So anyway, that's what I said. That's a caveat. Those are my kind of, prefaces that I say every time. Also, if you do wonder how to send them to your device, I'm not going to go over that today. If you go to the very first video in my playlist, the first time I talk about them, I go over how you can get them on your device. But it's basically if you're someone who, like, let's say you're someone who you've read arcs before that authors have sent you, it's literally the same premise. On these websites, you download it as an EPUB, and then you can email it to yourself the same way that you would email like an ARC to yourself. But again, I have more in details of how to do that on my very first video, so go check that out. Okay, so now we're 7 minutes in. Let's get into what things I've been reading this year. Okay, here we go. So, like I do with my regular books that I read every year, I do have a spreadsheet where I'm tracking my fan fictions that I read to kind of track a few things about them because I think it's fun. And this year so far, I've read 22 fan fictions. And again, these are all within the Harry Potter universe world. And out of those, the top 3 pairings that I've read are, of course, Dramini. That's always my number one, followed by Lucius and Hermione, followed by Snamini, Severus Snape and Hermione. Those are my top 3 that I've read. And those are honestly my favorites. I pretty much like her with any of the Slytherins I'm in. And then another pairing I really love is Sirius and Hermione, and I've read a couple of those as well. So those are kind of the top ones you're going to see from me. And then I have some real surprises in there. All the other ones that I've mentioned are just completely like other random pairings that or thruples even, we'll get to some of those, that I've really liked, and I hope to read more of them as well. Okay, so let's go to the beginning, where the very first one I read this year was Cherry Mint by Dirty Mudblood. And some of these have fan-made covers that I'll put up there if I have the cover. Most of them, though, I don't have a cover for, so it'll just be a blank thing. Again, everything I'm talking about will be linked down below, so if you miss a cover of one, it probably wasn't really a cover anyway. So anyway, just wanted to say that. Cherry Mint is by Dirty Mudblood, and this one was an Omegaverse, and I think it was just like the second or third Omegaverse that I'd read, because I did read a couple last year. But this one is a Draco and Hermione, and it is a Omegaverse 8th year, and she needs an Omega to take care of her, as we know, and Draco is only too happy to step up and do that. And yeah, that one isn't super long. It's under 60,000 words, very explicit, very sexy. And I gave that one 5 stars. So really, really enjoyed that one. Next up, I actually did do a reread, but I'm going to talk about it anyway because I loved it so much. So I don't care that it was a reread. I'm still going to recommend it to you guys. And that was Coming Undone by One Equal Temper. This is my very favorite Sirius and Hermione, and it's in my top probably 5 fanfics that I've read. And this one is a BDSM romance, as is a lot of my favorites because I love BDSM. And this one is a, of course, an alternate thing where Sirius lived, and he's now kind of that like honestly sexy older godfather to Harry. He has his tattoos, he's very like edgy and hot and everything, and he's a part of the family and everything. And one day Hermione is going to be they have, I think, like weekly dinners at his house at Grimald Place. And she happens to go there, I think, kind of early is what it is. And Sirius is actually in the den with a submissive that he is scening with. And the submissive is actually just kneeling at his feet, naked, wearing a collar, just like sitting there. And Hermione just sees it for a minute and then is like so embarrassed. And she flews right out of there and is like, oh my God, that was embarrassing. But the next time that she sees Sirius, he's like, okay, we have to talk about this. You know, and he explains to her that he's like, I do scene with people sometimes. I really like to help submissives go to this subspace that just helps them feel, you know, secure and safe. And it's a good way for them to shut their minds off. And this really speaks to Hermione because this is something that she's struggling with. And, you know, while she found it very attractive what he was doing, she also was just very intrigued by that calming effect that it seemed to be having. So Sirius is like, well, if you're interested, we can definitely experiment with that if you want to. And so they first start with a non-sexual experience for her to see what that subspace is like. And what I really loved about this story, it's why I always bring this one up, is that the subspace in this story is actually more of this like cerebral place. It's almost a magical plane that you can enter, where you really are like escaping from the world for a little while. And so Sirius, as the dom in this situation, is there to make sure that a submissive doesn't stay lost in it. You know, it's his job to put them into subspace and to bring them back out. And I love that. And very quickly their relationship turns sexual too, because they're just super attracted to each other. But there was an emotional component to this one that I found was fantastic. I loved it so much. So this is a 5-star one for sure, again, which is why I like reread this book, because, you know, it's also kind of that forbidden, it's your best friend's guardian, it's an age gap, he's a sexy, tattooed bad boy that Sirius is. That's a kind of Sirius that we love, you know, we love it. And then I read another Sirius and Hermione. I've actually only read 2 of theirs this year, so I definitely need to read some more of those. That's one of them. I love this pairing. But I read Mine by Graceful Lioness. I had actually read this fanfic author before, and this one was an Omegaverse. And this one I found very like interesting because Hermione, I believe, is like presenting for the first time. I'm not going to go into the total details of Omegaverse and everything because I don't even fully understand it that well. I'm just starting to get my bearings within it for sure. But he feels very like called to her, and so she starts presenting for the first time, and his alpha just goes crazy and her omega goes crazy, and their friends actually have to keep them apart from each other. They literally lock them in opposite rooms because they're afraid that they're not consenting to being together, that they're, you know, their alpha and omega are gonna force them into a situation they wouldn't normally agree to. And so they have this experience and it's very scary. And so Hermione ends up choosing to have her, like she's been having her omega oppressed. And then she discovers that because, I believe it's because of something that happened during the war, is if she stays suppressing her omega-ness for too long, she won't be able to have like children at all because she has a very shorter fertility window or something like that. Who knows? For romance reasons, right? And so but she decides she does want, that's going to be annoying, that she does want Sirius and her together. And so they have to talk that out and go from there. But I really enjoyed this one. I gave it 4.5 stars. They are soulbound. That's what it's called. They're soulbound omegas, which is really good. Okay, then there was a pretty naughty one, okay? This is one that I only gave 3 stars, so just know that when we talk about it. But I wanted to try something a little bit spicy. And I also have this thing, I've talked about this to my patrons and other people, is I want to read Hermione with every Weasley. I do like some of her pairings with Weasleys quite a bit, actually. Not Ron, of course. But I do eventually want to read a Ron and Hermione one that is like, makes Ron amazing. And I did read something with him later. We'll get there. But in this one, I was looking for one that had Hermione with Charlie. I'd read a Hermione and a Bill previously, read Hermione and Fred, but I hadn't read Hermione and Charlie. And this one came across, it's very hard to find Hermione and Charlie's, of course. Not a ton of people are writing that one, which I don't know why. He's amazing. You know, he works with the dragons and everything. Like, he'd be so fun. And this one is actually a Bill, Charlie, and Hermione. Yeah. And Charlie and Bill actually love each other. And Hermione is Ron's widow. Ron has died. And so the Weasleys are taking turns helping her with the kids. And there ends up being some naughty things that happen between all three of them. So this isn't going to work for everyone. It didn't even really work for me because that was set up to be very taboo and very, you know, incestuous type of situation. And it wasn't that taboo and it wasn't that good. So it was one where I was like, I was willing to try it for, like, I was willing to go with the taboo nature of it, but it didn't end up pulling it off for me in really any sense. So that was a bummer. All right, next up, I read In These Silent Days by Hey Jude 19. Hey Jude 19 is, of course, the author of Remain Nameless, which a lot of people love. And this one was a marriage law one for Draco and Hermione. And yeah, so this is a forced law, really stoic Draco. It was a slow burn and it was pretty good. It was them, like, you know, trying to make the best of this forced marriage. And, you know, it was just kind of average. But this one wasn't too long. It was about 65,000 words, which isn't too bad at all. And I gave this one 4 stars. And I mean, it still has that really great writing quality that Remain Nameless does. And it was a lot shorter, which was great, right? So many of theirs are very, very long books. Okay, then I read Nocturne by Skyen of Kushel. And this was not great. I did not like this one much at all. This was a Severus and Hermione. This one was a Voldemort wins and Snape is actually a double agent. And so he is paired with Hermione because the Death Eaters are being given, you know, the fault that happens a lot in fan fiction. And so he gets given her and she's kind of just supposed to go along with it so that he can continue to be undercover. And it was just okay, as I said. I didn't really care for it, so I don't have more details than that because I've kind of already forgot it. And this one was 120,000 words, so it was a decent size book anyway. And yeah, it just wasn't my favorite. It didn't really stand out for me. Okay, then there was Dreary Possession is what it's called. So it's Dreary-Possession. This is by Peachy Dreams XO. And this is one that I have literally had on my, like, in my Dreary folder for ages, like, ever since I had, like, got fan fiction. So I was trying to work through some of the older ones that I'd had. And this one is a little bit spicy. They actually end up in a secret relationship. Draco and Harry do, and there is some degradation and humiliation that they like doing together. And, you know, it's one of the ones where, oops, people end up finding out about their relationship and then they have to decide if they want to stay together or not. It wasn't awful, but I did give it a 3.5 for this one. Okay, then I read Diamond in the Rough by T. Stevenson. And this one was very spicy. I like this one so much. I literally wrote, this is Lucius and Hermione, and I wrote, this is super sexy, and Lucius is a DILF 1000%. So yeah, this one was a marriage law. They end up getting paired together, and this was BDSM. And they did actually, I believe, switch in this one. There was some switching that happened in this one because there's some pegging that happens. There was bondage and toys, and so this one was very spicy. And so I liked it because they were pushed into this marriage, but they very quickly discovered that they both had a lot of the same kinks. And so, you know, I love a story like that for sure. Then the next one, oh my gosh, I loved this one. The plot got to be a little bit too, like, arduous for me, but I'm still putting it up very highly with a lot of my favorite Lucius and Hermione ones. And this is The Flat Next Door by Smith and Barrowman. And this one is a Muggle AU. So if you don't know what that means, Muggle meaning, like, Lucius and Hermione are human. You know, they're not wizards in it. And or I mean just everyday people. And Lucius is divorced, and he's an author, and he owns this flat, and the flat next door, Hermione actually lives in it. And in the very beginning of him living there, he overhears a tryst that she's having, which is funny. In this one, her tryst is actually with Charlie. Her and Charlie are having a little fling. She's a ballerina, which I thought was really cool. And he overhears their sexy times. And he's a bit annoyed with it in the beginning, but she eventually, like, isn't doing that anymore, and he's just like, relief. Then he runs into who his neighbor is. So he didn't realize that Hermione was the one who lived there. He thought it was maybe the guy that he saw leaving her apartment. But she brings over a welcome basket, and he realizes that it was her that he overheard it. It's this beautiful younger woman, and she actually puts it together that, because he mentioned something about the walls being thin, and she's like, I thought our apartments were mirrored. And so she thought his bedroom was on like the opposite side, but no, she realizes that their bedrooms line up together, and she's so embarrassed. Like, it's really cute because she's like, oh my God, did you hear that? And he's like, yes, I did. And it's really cute because she's just mortified, and she's like, I'm so sorry. I will be much more aware next time. I'm so sorry. But they strike up a friendship through this. And this one's really cute because it's interesting. Like, so Draco in this one is married to, I can't remember who he's married to, but him and his dad have a really great relationship, actually. So Lucius brings his wife and Scorpius over to visit, and they really encourage him to ask Hermione out, which was really cute. Like, his son and his daughter-in-law encouraged him to ask her out, and it was just really cute. So it was a nice slow burn between the two of them. But the reason why I gave this one a 4-star is, like I said, it did get a bit arduous. This one was 140,000 words, so it's a really decent length, and the plot just drug on too long. And you'll hear me say that plenty of times. There are quite a few fan fictions that get a little bit too long, either because, the author's just writing these they're putting out episodes as they go, and maybe they don't know where the plot's going until it goes there, or whatever, right? So it can take a long time. But I still highly recommend this one if you love rom-coms, if you love age gaps. Like, this is a great intro one for sure, because this is one where they have the names of them, right? It's Lucius, Hermione, it's Draco, his wife, and Scorpius, like all these people, but they're not so like entrenched in, this isn't a manacled or a, initiation where they're like very dark and heavy. And it's a great intro to see if you will like one, for sure. And again, it's free reading, and it was basically a rom-com. It was fun. Okay, next up, I had one I did not care for at all, but I'll tell you why I read it. So there's this one called Slowly Goes the Night, which I assume is finished now. This is one of the only ones this year I read that it was unfinished when I started it, and I was a little bit annoyed with myself that I started it and it wasn't finished. I thought that it was, and it turned out there was like 4 or 5 chapters that still had to come out. And I didn't like that, because I always try to pick ones that are finished already because I want to read a complete story. I don't want to get hooked on a fan fiction that's not done yet. I just don't. But I picked this one because this is a Severus and Hermione, and I was looking for books that had lactation kink. So I know that's weird of me to say, but if you are a follower of this channel regularly, you'll know that one of my favorite books I read last year had a lactation kink in it. It was so sexy. It was a new mom, and like her part, like, it was hot. And I've read a few more books since then that have that, but I don't have enough to do a rec video yet. So I've been slowly trying to find them. And one of the places that I turn to is fan fiction, because it's very easy to like type in keywords and you can have things pulled up. And so there was a lactation kink in this one. This ended up being, it's an erotica. The author basically tells you that at the beginning, and like each chapter is like a different sexy scenario, basically. And I was like, cool, whatever. So yeah, there was lots and lots of sex, so much of it. And there was lactation kink and actually like belly kink, so like pregnancy kink, but without her actually being pregnant. There's this spell that Severus is able to do that has her body basically fake a pregnancy so that they can use it for kinky reasons. And I just ended up being more disturbed than turned on. that works, I guess, if you don't want to have children, but you want to do the kink and you're wizard, so you don't have to, you know, it doesn't have to be like a fake belly. You can grow one. So yeah, that was a bit much for Jenn there. So that one was like a 2.5, a 3-star for me. But yeah, it was all right. Lots of kinky fuckery in that one, and maybe you will find it delightful if you just want to read some little tidbits. Okay, next up, I have one of the ones that I own a copy of. So this is Love and Other Historical Accidents, and this was bound for me by my friend. We actually were doing some buddy reads for some fan fiction at the beginning of this year, and this is one of the ones we did. This has been on my TBR for a long, long time. It comes up on a lot of recommendation lists for a Dramini, and this one it was good, and I think a lot of people will enjoy it, but it was very, they're just swishing around up there, oh my gosh. And it is a time travel one, so yeah, they get sent back in time to earlier time with it, and then it's also crossed with like a Pride and Prejudice, so it's like they would get sent back to that time of things, and they're trying to figure out how to get back to the current time. But it was way, way too long, and there was so many characters in this book that it was a real struggle to get through this. Like, if I wasn't buddy reading it with my friends, I don't know that I would have like kept pushing through this. And I mean, of course, I have this beautiful copy my friend made me, and so I just wanted to love it so much. But at the end of the day, like, I don't really recommend this one. It also was a mature rating, which, you know, on AO3, there's different ratings for how spicy it is. There's like, it's basically like a PG-13 rating, and then there's explicit. So there's explicit, mature for teen, and then general audiences type of thing. And so mature and explicit will have spicy scenes in them, but mature usually means they're not really explicit scenes, and there's only a couple. And this was one that, like, it was in like the very last chapter basically that it was in. And also the time travel stuff didn't make a lot of sense, which I know it's hard to make time travel make sense anyway. But again, this is a highly loved fic, Love and Other Historical Accidents. If you don't want to read an explicit one, if you really love Pride and Prejudice and Jane Austen, you want to cross it with Draco and Hermione, this could be a really good one for you, for sure. And I did have a great time buddy reading it, even though it was a 3-star for me. And I probably would have DNF'd if I was on my own, but I pushed through to be with my friends, and I still had a good time. Then there was Disdain Me Still by Siren Grey. This was a short one. It was only 33,000 words, just little novella length. And this was a Lucius and Hermione. And I thought this one was interesting because it has a teacher Malfoy. And I believe that Hermione is a teacher too. Like, I think they're both teachers. And it's a forced proximity, slow burn. And I think he takes over dark arts. I think he takes over Defense Against the Dark Arts, and she is Transfiguration. I don't know. I'm probably talking out of my ass with that. I don't remember. But I know they both end up being teachers, and they have a little bit of a war going back and forth of, like, because maybe the kids go from his class to hers or from hers to his. I can't remember. And so the other teacher is always, like, holding them up or, like, causing problems. And eventually it boils over, and they start fucking each other, and then it's done. Like I said, it's not very long. But I liked seeing Lucius as a teacher. I know I have another one of those saved where he's a teacher too. I'll have to get to that one sometime. But I liked that idea. And I gave that one 4 stars. It was fine. Okay, then I read the one and only fic I've read where Ron is involved. And I actually really liked him in this one. But alas, the story could have been better is the thing. So this is called Piblocto. Don't know if I said that right at all. And it is by Ian the Waiting, which I have read others by that writer as well. And this one was Hermione, Harry, and Ron. It was an MMF. And what I found that was fascinating about it, and why I wish I'd liked it better, is that this was actually a dystopian. And it's a survival story. And so in this one, Ron is actually this really buff, like, bruiser type of character, and him and Harry and Hermione have been, like, surviving together in the wilderness. But yeah, there's been a nuclear fallout, and literally in a dystopian survival world, and they're always sharing that tent together and trying to stay, you know, away from danger and everything. And they all kind of fall for each other and will all, you know, are having some threesomes in the tent, basically. But I did like Ron in this one. I really did. But I just couldn't quite connect with the rest of the story as a whole. But I liked this Ron, and I liked the MMF aspect of it, of course. But it just didn't quite satisfy me for a whole as a romance on its own type thing. But it was very unique. And now I can say at least I read Ron and Hermione together. So check that off my list. Because there was no Ron bashing needed. We were all together and it was great. Okay, then I read Wild Woods by Buddy B13. And this one was Victor Crumb, Charlie, and Hermione. Okay, now this one was MFM because it's Omegaverse. And there's an evil Dumbledore in this one. So, yeah, I was hoping that this one was MMF when I started it. And it was even tagged as MMF, but I've said this many times as someone who loves poly romance. To me, where the F sits in the MMs is very important because it tells you who's fucking and who's not. And in this one, they just tagged it wrong. But I ended up really enjoying it, even with that, because of the Omegaverse aspect, and it made sense why they wouldn't all be fucking each other. There definitely is some scenes where there is threesome scenes, but yeah, they are, Hermione presents as Omega when Victor is there, for, I believe that the cup is happening, and I think that she is actually a 7th year in this one, like they aged her up a little bit. But Charlie is there, of course, because he brought the dragons. And so she presents, and he realizes that he, you know, she's his Omega. But in this world, you will have multiple Omegas with you. And Victor is very confused why she's gotten to the age she is and hasn't presented yet. And in this world, like, where he's from in Romania, like, you should have presented like earlier and been able to be taking something to keep you, you know, so there's a more civilized way to discover your alpha. Anyway, whatever, there's rules, there's the things. But why that's important that I mentioned it is there is a reason why Hermione hasn't presented yet, and it's because mostly the alphas in this are part of like Slytherin, and Dumbledore, like I said, there's an evil Dumbledore. He has been punishing the Slytherins by feeding them a potion that represses their alphas and omegas and everything. And so this is bad because once Hermione has presented as an omega, it starts causing some of the Slytherins to bust through that potion even and making them very volatile alphas because they were being suppressed, and now it's just like the lid has popped off of it. And Victor is very confused about like why all this is happening, but he also needs to protect his omega from them. So even though it's not the Slytherin's fault that this is happening, it's still like they're coming for his omega and stuff. But so it wasn't like too serious with a lot of that stuff, but I really did like this one because there wasn't any animosity between Charlie and Victor. Like usually in this world, the Omega will have multiple alphas because to get through her heat, it would exhaust a normal man type of thing. So that was pretty sexy in a lot of those. But again, they were more of the like, we'll tag team this than they were into each other as well. But it was all right. That was super confusing. Sorry about that. But I had a good time with this one. This Victor, Charlie, and Hermione. I was into it. I actually have a Charlie, Draco, and Hermione that's waiting for me. And I really want to read that one eventually. Very excited about it. Okay. Then there was Beneath by Morgan Mercy. And this one, oh yeah. Okay. This one was a Draco and Hermione. And this one's only like 30,000 words. It was a short one. And this one was a kinky one where they work together and they end up, you know, this flirty thing and they go out on a date. And Hermione is the dominant in this one. So that might be hard for some people to buy, but this one was really hot. There was also pegging in this one. There was him being sub to her, and it was pretty sexy, but it was pretty short. And there wasn't much substance to it. So I gave it like a 3.5 or 4 because it was definitely entertaining. It did its job. It was sexy, but it was just okay. Could have been better. Then there was Mind the Bump, which I really enjoyed so much. This is a Draco and Hermione, and it's an accidental pregnancy, and it's single dad Draco. So if I remember correctly in this one, they meet up at I think there's a work party, and he works in a different department than her, and they haven't seen each other in a long time. He's already a single dad with a little Scorpius, and I believe that his wife had died not long after Scorpius was born, I believe. The labor was very difficult on her because of a reason that you find out when you're reading this. And because of that, when Hermione discovers that she's pregnant, he's very scared about it because there's something about the Malfoys and the women that they pair with, why it makes birthing children very dangerous, right? You read this in a lot of fics as well. Reason why the Malfoys don't have more children and stuff like that is because of that. But what happens is there is a magically paired, it makes their magic like twins or something. And so what eventually starts to occur, the more pregnant that Hermione gets, the bigger the child gets, the closer that Draco needs to be to her, because if they're too far apart, she starts being in extreme pain and could lose the baby from if they're too far away. So they hardly know each other these days. You know, they had an accidental pregnancy. They were totally willing to work together for the baby, but now they're literally forced to live together and eventually have to be in the same room together all the time. So it definitely puts a big test on their very new relationship that they have. But I gave this one 4.5 stars. I thought they communicated very well together. I liked the surprise. I mean, I love Surprise Baby, so I really enjoyed it. This one was about 85,000 words. It's just a decent novel size, and I thought it was really cute in a lot of ways. You know, I love baby Scorpius, and him having a new mama just made me so happy. So yeah, it definitely teared me up a few times too when, I mean, I knew that Hermione was going to be okay, but there's a couple pretty scary scenes where we're not sure if she's going to make it or not. So definitely a trigger warning for complicated pregnancy. So know that going in. All right, we're getting there to the top here. So the other book that I buddy read this year was Chasing the Sun. And this is actually in 2 volumes that my friend made for me, because this one, y'all, is like, it is twice and again as big as Manacled. Okay, this one is almost 500,000 words, 500,000 words is this book, and like Manacled is, I believe, like 3,300 words, right? This one is almost 500,000, but this is a Snamini. This is also a few of my friends' like favorite fanfic in general. This is a slow burn. Okay, be ready for literally half of this is a slow burn. Where's part 1? I'll hold this up. But this is okay, so how to explain this? So this starts it's a alternative universe from Order of the Phoenix onward. So this starts 5th year. Hermione is underage in the beginning of this. She isn't by the time that they're together. Not only do they wait till she is older, but she's also a year older than all the other 5th years because of the time turner thing. A lot of people add that into their story if they want to age up Hermione a little bit, because they believe with, oh my gosh, it's so loud. They believe with how much she used the time turner her 3rd year that she's a whole year older than everyone else. So there's that. But she wants to become a healer, and so she ends up being asked to observe Professor Snape. And she, of course, hates Snape. She blames him for a lot of things, blah, blah, blah. But she gets asked by Pomfrey to observe him. Now, she's like, what do I need to observe? Well, Snape is undercover in this. We know that he's a double agent in this. And there will be times when he gets back from serving Voldemort that he will be almost dead. He will be crucioed so badly, he loses his bowels and throws up and is shaking. And it's awful. And he will need medical treatment. And then he'll gotta go back to work. And Hermione, who has a very harsh view of him when we start, begins to see the sacrifices that he's made, and also begins to see how selfish she sees that Dumbledore is for continuing to make him do this. And there were just some amazing changes that are made to canon with this. Like, honestly, they're so good. Particularly a part I really love, just to mention a few things, is that in like 6th year of this, Snape actually begins training the Golden Trio because Dumbledore said they're going to have to be the ones to defeat Voldemort. It needs to be them. And Snape is like, why have I done all this work all these years if you're just going to throw Harry Potter into it, right? And so he, honestly, with kind of like Hermione's thought, she's like, well, if he's not going to explain it to you, you can make us ready. You can help prepare us instead of just throwing us to the wolves, right? So they actually start their own kind of like Defense Against the Dark Arts thing where Snape is helping each one of them get better at magic, get stronger at what they do, be prepared to protect their mind. And I thought that was such a smart change, because it's like, if we knew that Snape was on our side, you know, we know that in this world, and he has so much knowledge, not only inside knowledge, but he's just a very good wizard. He's been, you know, doing this all this time. So I loved that change to it so much. And there's honestly some absolutely brilliant stuff where, yes, he's not very nice to the boys, but he is giving them lots of knowledge. Like, he's giving them real good knowledge in here for sure. So anyway, we do still have to deal with like Umbridge in this. Like, there's still a lot of the same like things happening. Very interesting who finds the Half-Blood Prince book this time around and how that's used. Like, the author of this, Lowton, just really like thought so many things through, and I loved that about it. I really, really did. So this was one I buddy read with my friends. I did end up giving it 4 stars because though I loved so much of that, this was unbearably long, y'all. It was so long. Honestly, I recommend that you just, you know, read the ebook, right? Which you will, because you won't have these, and just don't look at how much it is. Just don't look at the percentage. Just break it up. But it was worth it. And I'm very glad, again, that I buddy read this with friends, because I don't know if I would have got to it, but it has been recommended to me by my friend Ash for a long time, and I wanted to get to it. And so I was really glad that not only did I get these beautiful copies from my friend, but I got a buddy read this with my friend. Although a lot of times I did end up switching back to my Kindle, because these are so freaking, like, it's heavy. It's a heavy book. So highly recommend. And again, I'll have links to that one, because that one isn't available on AO3. It's on fanfic.net, so I'll put a link down below. All right, then I read Too Blind by Potato Simp 2023, and this one was a Severus and Harry one, and this one was a painful one, y'all. This one was very, very dark. It was 115,000 words. There we go. And this one is, like I said, a Harry and Snape romance. And in the beginning of this, so the way this setup is, Harry actually has had a crush on Severus for a long time. And when something went wrong, Snape got kidnapped. And they thought he was dead. They faked his death. But Harry has never quite believed that he was dead, but also he's just been mourning because he's lost everyone who's important to him. And even Snape, who again, he has a thing for, has died. Well, then when they do a raid on a Death Eater's house, they find him in the basement. And he has been so tortured. He has been raped, he's been abused, he's been tortured, and he's been broken. He's literally been broken. And Harry brings him back, and he's still like, Snape wants to end his life. He doesn't want to be there anymore, and the only person he'll trust to be around him is Harry. Now, he does like trauma bond onto Harry, and so Harry has to be very careful with how he takes care of him, and also he doesn't want to take advantage of him, because again, he loves Snape, he's attracted to Snape, he cares about him. And so Snape, with the torture that he has endured, you know, wants to please his master. So there's all of this like head stuff that's wrong with him that Harry has to be very careful with. So again, this was a very intense one. It's very dark. Be careful what you take on. But I did also, like, I was very moved by this one. It definitely moved me quite a bit. But I did end up giving it a like 3-star. I know I just said how much I loved it because it was so painful in the end of it. There was so much trauma we went through, and there was a lot of flashbacks was the issue, is we would flash back to the assaults that Snape was living through, and they were very brutal. So it was tough. But I know some of you like the very dark, very twisted, and it was well written, I'll say that. Okay, then we have The Dagger of Mercedes, I can't pronounce it, by that opera diva. And this one is 60,000 words. This is a Lucius and Hermione. This one was a forced marriage, baby deal, and this one also had some master-slave elements. So there is a dagger that Hermione has been poisoned with, and she's going to die from this if she does not if she is not married into either a Black or a Malfoy line. And so in this world, I believe Draco is gay in this world, so he's not really an option. I mean, he could have been an option still, but he's not. And so she gets married off to Lucius, is who they make the deal. So he gets his like crimes forgiven for marrying the war hero like Hermione and keeping her from dying. And it will make her even safer if she were to have a baby with him, because then she would have produced someone for the Malfoy line, and that would make her even safer. So this starts off very dark and twisted, but then I really thought it was sweet between the two of them. So yeah, this one was pretty intense, but it ended up getting sweeter as it went. Then there was Midnight Tasting by Crochet Away, and this one was Lucius and Hermione, and this one was a age gap, forbidden romance, and surprise pregnancy. This one also has some scenes with Snape, Lucius, and Hermione. But the HEA is with Lucius and Hermione because Snape really isn't interested in being married or being in a committed relationship, but they do like kind of like top Hermione together sometimes. So there's some goodness in there. And yeah, that one was 4 stars for me. And then I read The Program by Comfortable Silence. This one I actually just reviewed in my most recent weekly wrap-up, and it was okay. It was an Omegaverse, Draco and Hermione. But the last one I want to talk about is another one. This one's in my top favorites of the year so far. And this one was A Second Look by River Ryder. And this one is single dad Draco, and baby Scorpius is only 8 months old, and he's teething when Hermione comes across him and Draco, and Draco's just desperate for some help with his teething son, and Hermione offers a muggle solution, and Draco is willing to accept it. And then they begin to get to know one another again after so many years of, you know, just not really thinking about each other at all. And they fall in love, and it's a slow burn between the two of them, but it is beautiful. Like, their relationship is wonderful to watch. I love how Hermione falls in love with Scorpius and Draco at the same time. It's so beautiful. And there's just a beautiful, like, childhood enemies to friends to lovers with this. It was so sweet. This one wasn't overly explicit. It does have some open door scenes, but they're very sweet ones, and it's a really beautiful build up for the two of them. So I really recommend that one. So there you go. Those are all the fan fictions I've read so far in 2024. Let me know what you've been reading and loving. Feel free to give me a rec down below. I would love it. And again, I'll have links to every single one of these so you can go and get them for yourself. Thank you so much for watching, friends, and I'll see you next time. Bye.